Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 65 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van, where I have conversations with people who have relationships with residential vehicles. I'm your host, Marty Benson, and my Black Moxie and Loon t-shirt is covered in flour right now because I spent last night frying chicken sandwiches for a lot of people, and now I'm sweaty, hot, in the van in downtown San Diego, waiting for my dog to wake up from anesthesia. He's got his teeth cleaned. And that's not what this podcast is about, people. This podcast is about Chris Neel. Episode 65 features Chris Neel from Nashville, Tennessee. He's been in his van for 2 or 3 weeks. And I met him at Tiny Fest. He didn't enter his van to show at Tiny Fest because he didn't realize it was okay to show a van that was undone. His van's probably like 70% done. It's like 95% functional, but he hasn't finished some of the finishing touches and stuff, which I think is probably a good idea. You know, he's on this lightning fast trip around the country, and I think it's good to spend some time in the van to figure out exactly what you want. Chris flips houses in Nashville, and as such, he's got the know-how to build some really cool stuff. He's got heated floors and the coolest slide-out countertop that I've ever seen. It like slides into the slider door zone, sort of the way that my Leaf does. I was all proud of my Leaf that flips up and extends my countertop until I saw this badass concoction that he had cooked up. I tried something different for this episode, and we filmed it in Chris's van. You know, a little change of scenery or whatever. I might start doing that a little bit. And at the end of the video, I took some shots of his van. So it's not a full-blown tour, but you know, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform and you got like a video casting device or whatever, maybe go over to YouTube and scrub through it, check some shots of Chris's van out because it's really cool. I had a good conversation with him, and I hope that you enjoy episode 65 of From the Van featuring Chris Neel. All right, Chris, thanks for being on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about van life.
Yeah.
You and I were just at Tiny Fest. You didn't show your van because it's mostly done or partially done.
Yeah, there are parts. It's like from counters down. Well, I can't even say that because the floor is not finished either. Yeah. But anyway, you know, enough to not feel like I'm completely in a work zone.
Yeah, so. But you came out here like super duper fast, right?
Yeah, so I just started like van life, I guess, about 2.5 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been super fast, but also awesome. I tried to start it with Van Festival. So I did Van Fest in Utah and then Tiny Fest the next weekend.
Right.
And it honestly could not have worked out better. Everyone I've met and the people I've hung out with are always like, you're so lucky that you did it so early on to where you kind of learn how to like meet other van lifers.
Right.
Or kind of like not be as scared to go up and talk to people because you know that they're usually going to be open to it. So it's been great. Like, I mean, we're on now a group chat and stuff to where we're making sure where everybody is and then maybe meeting up later. So
hell yeah.
Adventure Islands was with us for a while when we were in Utah. So it's just been a great 2 weeks to be packed in, to be able to just meet different people.
That's really interesting. My friend Ellie, who was on the podcast a few episodes ago, she was... This sort of came out in the podcast. She was in the van for like several months before she met a van lifer. And I remember you and I were just talking in the parking lot the other day, and you said that the thing that really struck you is like sort of how real and open everybody is ready to be when you run into them.
I mean, like, I think that everyone that's choosing this lifestyle, whether it's full-time, part-time, they're all pretty open-minded when it comes to that. And so me being from Nashville, one big thing is it's not a big thing there. We don't have a lot of BLM land. You have to kind of go to national forest. So I think some people here don't realize is that I get pretty excited when I see another van lifer. Because like for me, driving through Nashville, you very rarely see any self-converted vans. If you do, it's more like a professional type build, and it's maybe not the same. To see someone that's actually worked on it is way more exciting. And I think that you all maybe have become desensitized to it because it's everywhere, but for us it's super exciting. So I felt like also I was new, I was coming out to it, I was excited to see it all, and like I still think hopefully I keep that too, because I do real estate in Nashville and Chattanooga and I flip houses, and so I love to see different designs, different ideas, and try and see if I can incorporate it, even different products people use. So it was pretty awesome.
Cool. Do you think that that experience that you've had, like in the first couple of weeks of staying in the van and stuff, is that going to impact the way that you interact with people when you go back? Like, say you're in Nashville, and you see somebody with a van.
So we were talking about that. So what's funny is that my biggest fear when doing this was that van life wasn't going to be what I had in my head. So I was imagining it being an open community and kind of easy to talk to people being open. And my biggest fear was that I would come out here and then all of a sudden it's like everyone's in their own kind of cliques, or it's just not as open to other people. And I think that because there are so many people here, I think you're going to get a mix, but they've all pretty much been pretty open and to hanging out, talking, do whatever else.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think that using the experience of knowing that, like we were talking about, you have to kind of just go full force into some of these relationships just because you don't know when you're going to leave or the other person's going to leave. And it kind of almost sometimes makes it easier because then if it doesn't go your way, or like anything, like any kind of friendship or whatever else, you can just be like, oh, well, now I'm going here, whether you're going to go there or not. You kind of always have an out, which can also be bad, let's say, too, because then sometimes you just peace out without actually having to work through it. But I do hope I can bring that back with me to Nashville. Like, I can be more open. I started journaling here and doing a gratitude journal as well, which highly recommend. It sounds, for being from Nashville in the South, it sounds really hokey to be like, oh yeah, like, or new age to be like, I have a gratitude journal. It's weird, but it really does change your frame of mind. I mean, within the first time I really did dispersed camping on this trip, or the first time I ever spent the night on BLM land, I got stuck. So I was in Moab and I was going down this road.
In the dirt.
And it went from like 0 to 4x4 in like 0 seconds. So like I went up over the hill, things were flying off. Normally nothing falls off, but things were flying off the shelves. My mirror had shattered on the ground, hit my just perfectly peeled off like stainless steel fridge. It just hit there, and I was like, so I'm freaking out and I'm like, I need to find a turnaround spot. Well, then I was like, oh, that looks like a good campground. I'm just going to pull in there and park in there. And oh, look, there's a tree. Well, trees hold soft sand around it. So I just went up and over with a full water tank and I just got stuck. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, you're not getting stuck. This isn't happening. It's not going to happen to you, right? Like you're going to be fine. So I just kept going, getting deeper. But I was able to call a winch and they were like, yeah, we can get you out the next day if you need to. So I spent 2 hours digging myself out, but it was in the middle of the desert. It was beautiful. I kind of got myself out, then I got stuck again. Anyway, I was just sitting there the next day thinking like, I could be really upset about this, but also I can work on my van while I'm sitting here because I have a bunch of my tools. I'm in the middle of the desert as opposed to in like an industrial. So I think it really does change your mindset to try and think like, well, I'm going to have to write something that, and I don't force myself to do it every day. It's kind of just whenever I have time. So it's nice to have that frame of mind of like thinking, okay, how is this really going to be a good thing as opposed to a bad thing? Kind of like the other day when I locked my keys in here and I was able to go over, like, instead of being like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this, it was more like, oh, I got to go talk with Marty and his friend and like, just hang out for a little bit. Whereas I would have just come in here, made dinner, whatever else. So you get kind of an interaction. So it's kind of nice to keep your frame of mind that way. And then the journaling, it's kind of like I stay in the moment more because you're going to want to try and remember stuff to write down, whether it's that day or the next day. So you kind of find yourself focusing more of like what's happening as opposed to like what's going to happen in the future. So
yeah. I mean, I'm from South Carolina, and not to get too into mental health or anything, but like our attitude about that is bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you are looking for like a way to center yourself or help or anything like that, you're like, something's wrong with you. You know what I mean?
100%. And that's where we talked about before, like, I went through depression 100%, like, right before and during COVID. And so, I mean, I was, like, at the end of when I started to try and, like, I think the hardest part for me was acknowledging that you were depressed. Because you just don't even know. Like, it's not talked about. It's not like, oh, if you have these symptoms, you have a cold. It was like, I feel like even in the U.S., especially in that part of the U.S., it's not something that you talk about. And so it's almost like it is an illness that everyone faces, whether it's like, I don't know, whether it's very light or severe. Like you have different varying things.
It's a huge spectrum.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I was I got COVID, which was actually helpful in October because I was almost 300 pounds. So it's like lost a ton. That kind of helped as well. Like,
wow,
kick the depression out. So I will say that I think as far as actions to bring back to Nashville is definitely gonna be journaling for me.
Yeah.
So, and I think like, it just seems weird because it's like no one's gonna really read it. So it's just like, and I don't even really go back and read it, but just a way to like get your thoughts out of your head on the paper. Sometimes you can like reread the day and be like, oh yeah, or like write down concerns. I don't know. It's been really helpful. Almost like a form of therapy for me. So,
just while I'm thinking about it, because I'm gonna forget, because I want to get back to that and your motivations. But there's a fire department right there.
Yeah.
And so what I used to do is I would take the keyless entry from my old van and leave it in the van and take my little valet key, because it was a Mercedes with a little metal valet key, and I put it in my board shorts when I went surfing. It was like 8:00 at night. I get out of the water and somehow that thing has broken free from my shorts, right? And so I'm locked out, and my girlfriend is down in San Diego at a theater rehearsal, and she's not going to be back for like 2.5 hours and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And it was like a whole thing. I went for a run to stay warm because I didn't have any fucking clothes.
You probably was freezing.
Here, it gets cold at night. And my buddy's a firefighter. I was telling him this whole story because I thought it was funny a couple days later or whatever. He's like, you know that a firefighter can break into your van like in 2 seconds, and they'll do it for free if you can find one. And there's a fire department here. So if it happens again and we're not parked over there.
Yeah. No, I'm going to try and be a little more prepared next time.
So, let's go back to like, when did you decide to, what was the sort of impetus to start the van?
Yeah. So, like I said, I do real estate. I'm from Nashville, have a condo and stuff there, but I've been doing a lot of real estate in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a little more outdoorsy. But I was finding myself going back and forth mainly on the weekends, but my condo being completely empty, and I was like, man, it'd be so nice if I could rent it. I was talking to my cousin, who actually lives in Loretto, who had been they did overlanding like 10 or 15 years ago in the back of an old 4Runner. And they were then in an RV, and she was like, why don't you just get like an RV or like a bus or something? And I was like, honestly, that's a good idea. I was like, I've been looking at vans. I went first, I want to do a bus. Then I was like, no, I want something a little bit smaller, easier to get around.
There's so much more nimble vans.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, it was, if I was going to go back and forth between there and Nashville, which is what I do a lot, or from Chattanooga to Nashville, I could park in my covered parking lot as far as that goes at my condo, which is right downtown, still see friends, not feel like I had to stay at their place. So that's kind of what started it. And then, just looked at hundreds of hours of YouTube videos and stuff like that. So I started to do more stuff. Then depression part was like a 6-month or so span where I really did absolutely nothing, and then kind of got way back into it again, probably around the beginning of the year. So it's been a year that I've had the van, but really haven't been working on it for a year.
Sure. And so what is your background? You told me that you flip houses, but that can mean a lot of things, right?
So, went to school for finance. We've always been pretty handy and like fixed up houses and stuff ever since I was younger. So I've learned a lot from that. And then, I had a construction company for a while, but then the market tanked a little bit. So then I did a regular corporate job, then got back into flipping houses again. So I'm used to do all the work, and now it's kind of like I'm trying to sub out as much as I can to kind of be able to do this, so where I can like kind of almost do some of that from the road.
Yeah.
And with my family all there, they can check on it as well while it's in Chattanooga. So my background is pretty much figuring things out, figuring out how to make it look nice. And so that's kind of been like anything I can do to the van that seems like, as I want to say, bougie, like the heated floors. But if I can try and I love trying to figure it out and being like, okay, that's going to work. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to figure out how I can wire that system into a normal thermostat to where then that way I don't have to like use the factory given controls, because it won't come on at a certain temperature. You have to turn it on. So anyway, it's been fun to do that kind of stuff on the side and kind of use a creative, because I do like to do creative stuff, but to be able to like pick whatever I wanted to do to all the finishes and stuff. So it's taken a lot longer, but it's also so gratifying to like think of something for like 10 hours or something, or even longer, and then finally see it come to life through a few iterations where you get to the point where you're like, you're doing it, fixing it, doing it, fixing it. You're like, this is so stupid. I hate this. And then when it finally comes together, like the bed here, when it finally comes together, you're like, this was totally worth it. And you can kind of tell some of the stuff that I spent a long time on, like my table and the bed, are the two things I love the most, and the things I get more people are like, that's a great idea. I didn't think about that, or whatever else.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a great segue. Let's talk about like what's in your van, and then maybe after that we'll talk about what you're gonna try to do to it to finish it out.
So when I was starting to figure out what I want to do with my van, or like as far as the layout goes, I was like, do I want to fix bed? Everyone talks about the fixed bed, convertible bed, this. Me, I'm not a very big bed maker, so I knew that I wasn't gonna be making a bed every day, so that would look dirty, much less converting a bed every day. If I had to convert a bed every day, I guarantee you would be in bed mode for most of the time, or I would just always sleep on the small section of like a banquette type thing.
Yeah, like right here.
Yeah, exactly. So I would sleep here and then hang over. So instead I started seeing like a Murphy van or two on Jared's channel, and so I was finally, I think I saw he had videoed someone named Shaden, and I was like, oh, that's a cool idea, so you can have Soul walk through. And then I saw he did Brandon Buckley's, and I was like, that is the like framework of the layout I want. Like I want exactly like push back, just whatever else. But I kind of wanted to have this open, so it'll be like a convertible, like almost like a garage door type thing right here. So it'll be 3 more panels, so I could still lock it off if I want to, but open it up to see out. This turns into like a bench and stuff like that. So yeah, the bed, there's still like tile work, everything still needs to be done, but you know, it works for me. So
yeah, but I mean, tell me about the actuators, because you were
you're
going into this,
sorry,
and that's like
the bed comes down and rests on the
it comes down onto the countertop.
Yeah,
okay.
I can show it to you later. And then there's actuators in here that there's a button behind the bed you just push up or down, and so it goes up. I just put my iPhone on there, and I can actually level the bed left and right.
Yeah.
So I don't have to sleep in a perfectly level spot, so I can level it this way and then put my head wherever's higher.
Okay.
So it's great. Or if like you feel like you want the bed up, I mean, you can just adjust it while you're in there to lift 225 pounds each and then hold 500 each.
Right.
So, I mean, it takes a little while, but it's not too bad.
Do you find yourself trying to get it perfect every day, or?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of a routine to where it's like, it takes a while, so you just put it down, turn it on, go find your phone, get it to level, just place it on there, and it'll turn bright green, so you just hit stop. I mean, it takes like 35 seconds to make it level.
Okay. Crazy.
And the other nice part is that I don't have to make my bed at all. Like, all I have to do is just fold it up with the blankets and pillows in there, and it just stays.
That's funny, because like, when Colette moved out of the van, because I've always been, my attitude has always been, my bed is for 2 things. Sleeping and fucking, right? And it doesn't need to be made for either of those reasons when it's in another room, right? And when Colette moved out of the van, I didn't make the bed for like a week or 2, and then I was like, oh, because ours is fixed. Right. I was like, this is usable space, and I don't want crumbs in my sheets. So now I make the bed every day, and I'm laughing at you in just a second ago, because I'm like, oh, he didn't want to take the time to make his bed, but he's got to sleep perfectly level, because I will sleep on a crooked ass hill, man. As long as my head is above my feet, I don't care.
That's the biggest thing. But you kind of feel, I don't know why. It's just like, I definitely will always keep my head above, but like just to be able to be level is just something that's, again, a bougie thing.
Yeah, like heated floors, it's badass. So, like when you told me about it, I was thinking about those the lowrider cars with the hydraulics.
I kind of wish I could do each one individually. If I could do each one individually, I could actually get my bed perfectly level.
Perfectly level.
But yeah, that's a little more the work that I wanted to do.
Crazy. So I want to talk about the countertop, but let's start with the heated floors. What's the deal here? What do you have going?
So it's antifreeze that runs through here. So I routed out my subfloor. Yeah. And then did the PEX lines, ran antifreeze through there. It's an S-bar hydronic heater, which actually they make for gasoline engines, which a lot of people don't realize. They think it's only diesel.
Some of the other ones are only diesel.
Yeah. And so I can do my heated floors. It also has like a separate blower that'll blow out the hot air through a heat exchange, and then it'll do my hot water, and whenever I do a recirculating shower, it'll do the hot water for that too. And then everything on here is pretty much gas powered. So as far as like running off of my engine and gasoline tank. So I don't have any solar. I only have a high output alternator from Nation Starter, but I did install an auto start feature through my security system to where low voltage relay tells me if my house batteries are less than 11 volts, starts the car. Idling, I can get like up to 100 amps to like 120 amps. Like
how much battery do you have?
510 amp hours of lithium. So
okay, that's a lot. Yeah.
If I had to do it over again, so I bought those, then I realized I could do the auto start. Like I thought that through and kind of got the installers to do it. I would do one less battery.
You'd have gotten fewer batteries,
Yeah, I would probably do less because that, I mean, honestly, driving it around just a few minutes a day is crazy as far as how much it actually charges.
You're full.
And like, if I'm using the induction and I start the car, it'll actually, cover all of the induction, which is about 127 amps, and then charge an extra 50 amps
You're
on top
running
of that.
at a surplus. Yeah, cool.
Just idling. So it's like, it barely takes any gas for the S-Bar, and then with the idle, it's really not that big of a deal. So, I mean, so far I haven't had an issue. We'll see if I do need to actually do solar. I'm always open for, nothing is forever. So
Yeah, sure. Of course. Well, I'm about to go and rewire my solar array to be like series parallel and this afternoon, hopefully. You constantly working on your van. You're never
I kind of almost feel like I just couldn't handle learning any more things, and I was like, I can make it to where I don't need solar right now, and then I can learn about it later.
It's almost kind of feel
it's almost kind of where that went with. So,
yeah. When we built the van, I had 2 van payments that I kind of couldn't afford, and so it was like, finish this van right now so I can sell the other one, like as soon as possible. And so it's great to have the leisure to like sort of like feel things out. When I fucked up, I'd lose half a day, and I'm like really mad at myself and stuff.
And that is definitely like, I was trying to get this thing as perfect as possible, because I think we talked about like the reason I didn't even show it or even sign up to show in Van Fest is because I thought that I just wasn't like, it wasn't a thing to show unfinished vans.
Right.
And so like, it's still finished enough, but I realized like once I got on the road, I was in Colorado at, I guess, Silverton Lake or whatever. I was sitting there and I was like, this is crazy. I was like, honestly, perfection is right now. It's like the time between completion for this van. Like, so like, had I not been on the road and just been working on the van, I would have missed out on way more opportunities, or at least enjoyment than I ever could have thought with it being halfway done. So.
Well, and you said earlier, you were like, I was worried that van life wasn't going to be what I anticipated it being, and where I thought you were going. You were talking about the culture of the people in van life, but I anticipated when I moved into the van to hate it, just because of how limiting it is, and
I love it,
and all of that, and I spent a lot of time thinking about people's perception of us and that sort of thing. But I think one of the other wonderful things about living in an unfinished van for a short term is having spent a year in that van, and then building our second van, we knew exactly what we wanted. And at first you have this idea, like spatially, of what you're going to want to do, and spending time in here with some of the things not finished and framed up. I imagine that you're going to change your mind about some stuff. Have you already come up with some things that are like not going to be what you originally expected them to be? Since the beginning of the trip?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the uppers, since I have to look at them all undone, I've been trying to figure out kind of like, I had some ideas of like putting in like, I don't know, design wise I had a totally different idea, and I've changed that since being on the road, just kind of thinking about and seeing other people's vans. So it's definitely was the point, was like, I didn't want to lock myself into something. I mean, I knew the floor plan was definitely dialed in for what I wanted, but I wasn't sure about some of the finishes and stuff, which has been nice to be able to kind of see what others have done. And like the grass in the front, Vision van changed my whole outlook on whether
those guys are fun.
Literally, I was always like, it's gonna be so weird to just have like grass in the front, like it's kind of like cheesy.
Yeah.
And then I stepped into their van because they'd make you take your shoes off, so it was great. I took my shoes off and I was like, this is what I've been missing. I've been missing actually like walking around on grass, like, because here there's no grass anywhere, and I was like, it kind of feels like home. I can just drive with my feet in the grass. It was amazing. So I don't know, it's kind of also just being open to that kind of stuff is also big. So
yeah, I love that stuff, dude. The turf up front.
It's so awesome.
Okay, now let's talk about the counter. This is like, I mean, heated floors are cool, but like, this is the sexiest shit in your van as far as I'm concerned. So you have the same sort of, your countertop goes into your slider space a little bit.
Correct.
Because you don't need to pull a freaking VW in the slider.
No,
it's like
exactly.
way too big, right? Unless you're moving furniture.
Right. I mean, as long as I could fit my fridge in and out, there's no reason. And plus, you have the big top opening. So I decided I wanted to kind of push that as far out over there because I wanted a ton of counter space. So now I have an entire coffee bar on the side.
Yeah.
I love coffee, so
yeah.
Anyway, I was looking at different options so Brandon Buckley had done the same kind of thing as far as his sink being recessed. Mm-hmm. His cooktop was way over here. And I was like, well, I kind of don't want to I want to have a swivel so I can kind of make it like a big, if there were a bunch of people in here,
sure.
easy to fit people in. But I didn't want to have one of those flip up sides as far as, for the extra counter space because I was going to put my cooktop over my fridge out, looking out the door. So again, just, I call it thoughts while high. I was having a thought while high and I was like, what if the whole like countertop just slid out and then it could be my table for my chair and it could hide the cooktop and then that way I don't have to see the side. Anyway, worked out perfectly. Like, couldn't be happier with it. It's nice because if you want to start cooking, you don't have to like clear the space on top of your cooktop to open it. You just slide it open so you could just push stuff out the way and so you still have all that usable stuff. I sit there and I journal, I work on whatever, because with the door open you can see perfectly out there as far as the table goes. There was some problems with it just flying open for a while, so I have it on an electromagnet, but the electromagnet's a switch now. I'm gonna tie it into my actual like ignition, since
that's so
I
rad.
forget all the time. So it's like sometimes you'll be going and then you'll not realize that you kind of hit the brakes a little bit and it just goes whoop, boom, and just hits the back and you're like, dang it. So
just for the sake of exposition for anybody who's not listening, or is not watching, and we'll have some video of this thing sliding out at the end of the podcast on the YouTube version, but basically your countertop that sticks out into your slider is above your fridge, and it actually slides, the whole countertop slides forward towards the front of the van, and under it is revealed a two burner induction cooktop.
So it completely opens up the top to expose the induction side by side.
And then what you're talking about in terms of locking it is there's a locking mechanism in the slider, but it's not enough to keep it closed, and so you put an electromagnet.
It's kind of what you see in the glass security doors, if you've ever been, where you have to like buzz yourself in and you open it, you see like a metal bar up there with like, looks like a magnet with two bars in it. It's a smaller version of that.
Same sort of
it's
deal.
The same exact thing.
Yeah, cool. Well, what's your plan for this recirculating shower that you referenced?
So I'm gonna do, I can't remember the YouTube channel, but there's a YouTube guy that did a recirculating shower. It's just 3 huge blue filters that brings it down to like, I forget the microns or whatever else, but it brings it down and goes through UV light to sterilize it. And then he has an S-Bar diesel heater and has his as a Sprinter. And he talks about him and his wife being able to take showers. I want to say it was like a week or 2 weeks without it like really ever getting gross.
Whoa.
The smell might still be there, but like as far as like the smell of soap.
Yeah.
So like for me, that would last forever, but it's nice because whenever you'd fill up your water, you could just fill up the extra tank. It would be connected with a valve and everything else, but then it just constantly recirculates at 7 gallons. And with the hydronic heater, I get instant hot water, so I don't have to worry about the drain on my battery from that either. But then that way you just it gets hotter and hotter the more you sit there in the shower, but you could just shower forever.
Cool.
Which is nice.
Hydronic heater, is that the same thing as your S-Bar?
That's the S-Bar, yeah. Hydronic just means that it's using the antifreeze as opposed to the Airtronic that's just blowing air. That's what a lot of people have. Or just those like diesel type heaters that just blow air through.
And the antifreeze is probably a whole lot more efficient, huh?
I don't know if it's efficient, but it's the only way you can do a multi system, like for your hot water, the floors, and your heat. It's the same thing for your car, right? So your coolant goes through your car, and then it goes through a heat exchanger, and that cold air blows across the hot coolant and gives you the heat of your car. It's the exact same theory. You can even tie it into your coolant line if you wanted to of your actual vehicle. But I just decided to have its own separate system.
Separate deal.
So
let's talk about your water system real quick.
Yeah.
What do you got going? How many gallons is your tank?
33 gallons of fresh water, 5 gallon of gray, but it just has a button to drain it underneath the car. I did a mini test run of how the recirculating shower would go, so I have it going through a two-stage filter plus so 2 filters, the carbon filter within the UV light. So because I was planning on going to Baja to visit family, but didn't work out this time, but next time. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of always know that the water was clean, and also I drink a ton of water, so I just fill up water bottles and put it in the fridge.
Yeah.
So I've honestly haven't bought any water while I've been doing this. So a lot of people, they'll buy bottled water or spring water to drink.
Right.
It's been perfectly fine and actually doesn't taste gross at all. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well let's go back to, you mentioned family, my favorite question. What's your relationship, what's your inner circle's relationship with Chris moves into a vehicle?
I think everyone's pretty cool with it. I think yeah, I mean right now, because I had cousins that had been doing it for so it's for about 15 years. And they did all different
These are the people in the radio.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned overlanding. I didn't know if they were just bouncing around or if they've actually been living in vehicles.
They lived in they did the Pan American Highway. So they went all the way down in South America.
Rad. Very cool.
So they did it for almost a year just in the back of pretty much a pickup truck. Then they did the U.S. in an RV, and then they went into Mexico. They're now residents of Mexico.
Okay.
So they actually lived in there. They love it. They still have the RV and different kinds of stuff. They were home on the highway is theirs. So they have, I think, a blog, and I know they have the Instagram and stuff, but it's funny to see them sometimes. I've actually seen them because when they visited me in Nashville, they did some stuff on iOverlander, and I was looking the other day, where could I sleep? And I click it, and I'm like, that's them. I was like, that's them talking about when they stayed with me, or stayed around where I lived. So my family's been pretty open with it. It's also because I feel like I haven't given up a condo yet as far as renting it.
It's security that Chris still owns a place.
Right, exactly. So for them,
that's reassuring.
Yeah, it's they know that I'm gonna have to come back to at least do that. But I mean, they're totally open to it. I don't think that they have any reservations. I think they also see that I enjoy it a lot too. So obviously they only want the best. And then all my friends and stuff they can be really, I mean, they talk about being jealous as far as, especially being able to just travel for a few months with my job, being flipping. I can finish some houses and then just kind of
cruise,
do whatever. I just started posting more on Instagram on views from my van. So it's nice because that's a way I can make sure my mom doesn't call the police to search where I am. If I don't.
Well, he was alive 2 days ago.
He hasn't sent pictures. I mean,
He's in
honestly,
San Diego.
They sent me a secret message the other day because I told them I was going to go out and camp with a bunch of people from VanFest, and my dad texted me and was like, "Hey, what was Manuel's price on paint for Everett?" And I was like, "Manuel, you mean Abraham?" And he's like, "Okay, good. That mom wanted me to send a fake message or whatever to make sure that it was actually you on the phone." I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, you could also FaceTime me or call me. I was like, any of those things would work too. But yeah, so they like me in the van, but I know my mom is anxious about it all the time. So,
yeah, sure.
So that way I can at least post and she'll feel like she's there.
I feel like my family and some of my friends have been nervous or resistant or whatever, but I've been living in a van full time without owning a condo in Nashville.
Without any kind of backdrop or security.
With 2.5 years. And I feel like everybody's easing into it. I had the same experience. I'm wondering have you done much city stealth camping? Is there
I just want to know, because you're so new to this thing. I had a bunch of like really anxious experience sleeping in the street. I was in a permissioned lot one night and got nervous, like super nervous, and there was nothing going on.
So I will say, I love sleeping in the van so much that, like, if I'm at home, like the condo, a lot of times I'll just sleep in my van in the parking lot of the condo. Like, honestly, like I have a full bed, bathroom, everything else upstairs, but sometimes it just feels, I call it the big hug. You kind of feel like you're like in your own little enclosed space.
Cozy, dude. You're like a bear in a cave, man.
So I'll actually sleep in here sometimes. Yeah. But I think Nashville, because it's not as known that people convert vans and sleep in them, it's not as concerning to do that. Here, when Vision Van gave me a place to stay, I first went over to Mission Beach and stayed at the one that you can actually stay at. And that one, I slept fine there that night. But then when they told me another place that really wasn't checked a lot in Carlsbad, the first night I was like, every time I heard a car door shut, I was like, what is that? What is that? Like, I would jump up. And then after not being bothered, now I can sleep super easy. Like, it's not I think, and I'm talking to some other van lifers, I mean, they give you some good things. It's like, look, just tell the cop, look, I was really tired. I didn't think I could drive. So I just wanted to take a nap in the car. I was like, I'm happy to move. Just, do you know of a safe place that I can park that you'll actually allow? And so I think a lot of times cops aren't there to like really give you tickets. I think sometimes, especially if they're knocking on your window, they really do care. They want you to move, and kind of, they'll give you a good recommendation, right? They'll be like,
they're usually there because somebody called.
Right, exactly. They're like, this probably isn't the best area, but go here, you'll be fine. So like, I think having that thing of like, yeah, it's going to be scary. I think for me, it's less about being knocked on by a cop, but not knowing who is knocking. So that would be my biggest concern, is like getting a knock. But what's nice is I can poke my head up through here so I can see, as opposed to like having to look, like if I have it all covered up in the front, I don't have to open the front. I can just stand up and hopefully either see a cop car or something and kind of talk to them from here, as opposed to going up to the door, you know? So like, there is some little bit of security of that. And there's no ladders on my van because I just step up on the Murphy bed up out of the roof.
Right.
And no solar or anything else. So it's decently stealth. I think I'm going to use the bread trucks. The
bread trucker.
The bread trucker. I'm going to use his genius idea of the extension ladder being the sides of my roof rack.
Just mounting them on the sides.
And then going between with a loon or whatever else I need. Like, that is genius. Because
and inexpensive.
Yeah, exactly. Both.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the answer to this. How do you cover it up in the front? What do you do when you go to bed at night?
Well, and honestly, where I've been, I just left it open.
Yeah.
I just don't cover it up at all. But if it's somewhere that I'm not sure about, or I don't want anybody to see in, or whatever, I'll put reflectix up. I have some I just cut to fit there.
To hang from those hooks between the...
Oh, no. They just go up in the windshield. I put a moving blanket. I just clip up a moving blanket up on top of there, and then I clip a moving blanket back here if I need to.
Cool.
So it's just pretty blackout, and also... they're pretty insulating too. Like for me, when it was cold, it was great to keep the heat in just this one little area.
Sure. Well, where do you see yourself? You're going to go back to Tennessee, to take care of the house situation. And then what? You finish the van there and strike back out? What do you see the van turning into for you?
I see, it's going to sound like everybody. I see it as the possibility to do one or two vans, like just do another one. That what I really like to do.
Yeah.
As far as like getting a transit, super nice transit, redoing another one, selling this one, and then kind of having the transit, and then potentially maybe doing one or two a year instead of flipping houses, doing a van or so. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
But again, it's one of those things where I'm still trying to suss that out doing this. And I think that going to festivals and showing people my van and them being like, this is awesome, like them appreciating things that took me so long to figure out is nice and kind of reassuring to where it's like, yeah, maybe I could do that. Maybe it's not going to be maybe my living, but it's one of those things where I could have this as more of a creative outlet and still do the house flipping and stuff like that, but have this be more of like, hey, I want to do this random cool like effect on this or whatever.
Right.
You know, like just kind of do crazy things that you can't do in like a normal residential house that they wouldn't be as open to. I feel like we talked about from the beginning, van lifers are more open to like random cool things or just different things than most people. So.
Right. Weird shit. Yeah. It's so funny. I think about that all the time, how the like we were saying about mental health, which is a terrible fucking analogy, but the spectrum of people's tolerance for roughing it is so broad.
Yeah.
And I mean, across the general public, of course, but even across like van lifers and people who live in vehicles. Like I know people who live in Subarus with like basically nothing in there. And then there are people who are like, they have to have the swankiest version of this. Like I cut so many corners on my van, but my electrical system is out of control. Awesome. Right. But the stripping on my counters is falling apart and I don't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's definitely true. Like my cousins who started doing this a while back and they're living in Loretta, they would be like, you don't need running water. You don't need this. It's like, I mean, it's true. I really don't. But at the same time, it's like, if I'm going to do it, and the other thing is, I know how to do it. So it's like, it's not like I'm going to spend a lot of time learning how to do plumbing or even some of the electrical stuff. I had to do a little bit for the 12 volt because it was a little confusing at first. But I mean, I do this for a living. So it's like, I know it won't take me super long to do it. So I'd rather have it just because I can, as opposed to like, I could not have running water. Would it be annoying? Yes. Do I want to like, it's just something that I knew I could do to take a worry or an anxiety out of my brain, right? So then I'm not always being like, I need to go buy more water today. I need to do this, that, whatever. It's like, now I have a huge water tank. I don't have to think about it for a week or two. And then I get to focus on other things. Like, so you can live way less than, and especially like you don't need
heated
floors, but so nice and that, it's like, especially coming off the beach and like having your sandals off and like walking in on like warm floor. Like, there's nothing better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Except now it's getting a little warm in here. You might have to crack the vents.
We'll wrap up soon because we both have things to do. I worry about people who are like venturing into van life, like my friends and stuff who are becoming interested in this as they see me like happy in the van. And I've also noticed that during the coronavirus, like because of the lockdowns, the quarantine and all of that stuff, people who were kind of laughing at me all of a sudden were like, how do I do this? Because it's the only safe way to travel, or the only solitary way to travel.
And almost
last
probably
year.
Like approved, honestly, too.
Yeah. But when people are talking about getting into van life, I almost encourage them. I'm like, hey, if you're not just going to get a vehicle to like travel in, you're actually planning on moving into it. I think it's a good idea to err on the side of too many bells and whistles and too many amenities, because there's so much difficult about living in the van, even if your van is a $200,000 pro build or whatever, because you're still living in a fucking tiny vehicle, right?
And so, I mean, for me, like you said, it was like, there are all the bells and whistles in here because one, I wanted to know, I knew this wasn't going to be my only van, pretty much. I had this was the only van I ever test drove, the only van I'd ever really been in, and never been in any other type of van that was empty, like work van.
Yeah.
So I just kind of knew I wanted this boxy, like to do the Murphy bed. But I knew I was like, I'm just going to go all out because I can. And it's like, it doesn't cost me as much because I have 12 volt valves everywhere. They can push buttons to open and close things just because I can. It's like, let's just see, like, maybe I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, a regular one would have been fine. And so the next van, I'll just do a regular, but it's like, let's make this like a spaceship almost.
Right. Yeah.
Just to see, and then par down from there. Once you know, like, like the floors at first, I was like, I'm probably never going to use them. I use them all the time.
All the time, huh?
Like waking up, I'll just turn them on and just kind of wake up, and then you get down, you got a nice warm floor, make you some coffee, and I'm like, I don't think I can ever really go back.
You mentioned this. Is this a Dometic Skylight? Is that what?
Dometic, the Hinky 4.
Okay.
So it's the crankshaft open, so it goes completely open.
Cool.
And it's got the bug screen and the blackout shade on it.
Yeah.
And then I wrapped the lights that are on here. I wrapped them in like a red theater film. Because it's supposed to be better for your eyes at night, which it is. Like, it's not, rather than turning on, even if you have the LEDs dimmed, the red's way nicer. And it doesn't attract as many bugs. So
And it's harder to see from the outside if
correct.
stealth is an issue.
Yep. And so it's not as big of a deal for bugs here, but like in Nashville and like the East Coast, there's a lot of bugs. So that keeps them from just you being able... I don't have any screens on my doors or anything yet, so I can leave them open and not have to worry about it too much. So, yeah. Cool.
Well, I figure that's probably mostly it. You have a sexy ass huge fridge. This is the isotherm?
Yep.
What's the size of it?
130, I think.
Big guy.
Yeah. The only thing is, well, it does fit 2 tequila bottles nicely, so that is nice. But it doesn't fit a pint of ice cream, which is good, because I don't really need to store pints of ice cream, because I would eat them in one sitting.
Right.
So, yeah.
Here's one more question.
Yeah.
About the van. Is you talked about the recirculating shower, and you said a minute ago that you want to make it like a spaceship. Is there anything else like zany, crazy that we should look out for that you're gonna put into the
only
finish?
thing that's, I don't want to say zany crazy, but like, so my garage doors, these will open, so like this can unlatch and go down, so it's the seat, so this will all be folding.
Okay.
And I'm gonna kind of try and do the same thing for the front, so I'll have a bulkhead that'll slide, and then
accordion sort of thing,
and an accordion thing on the right.
Okay.
Well, not even like a straight one that it can slide back and forth.
Yeah.
And then this side will be 2 straight panels that'll kind of fold in on each other.
Okay.
And go out to where I can still, because I mean, obviously it's my table. I love the ability to swivel my seat. So, but I also like the idea of having a bulkhead there to kind of keep it either more secure whenever I'm not there, or if I'm sleeping and I don't feel as safe. It's just good. It would be nice to have that option, but again, like call that version. Those are like version 2.0 things. I'm still in beta right now.
Right.
So we're beta testing, but yeah. So I mean, there's that. Like, there's some shelving stuff. I want to do like stripped wood, like so it'll just be the same color as the bottom with just like slats, and then do
cabinets.
the same. And then do the same thing all the way over there to where it just looks like a wall of like a feature wall. But then you just push to open the doors, and so the shower will kind of manually come out. You'll have to put another little pan, so it'll be deeper than 24 inches, so it'll kind of be where I can use the Max Air fan right above it. So.
Yeah, cool. What's your program in terms of your return to Tennessee? What's your like rough route? What are you planning on seeing?
So now that it looks like Canada's not opening, well, I guess it's gonna they could still open in June. They were saying.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna try it. So I'm going to descend on La Sierra later this month, at the end of the month, and then I'm going to kind of make my way back over to the West Coast, and then I saw it where
the East
Eugene or East Coast, yeah. No, West Coast.
Oh, to the West Coast. Oh, you're going back to. Oh,
so
you mentioned Eugene.
Sierra, I'll go up, and then I'll probably go see where you were talking about Eugene. So I might go, or no, what was the Eureka?
Oh, Eureka.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw that's
yeah.
like right across from where I'll be.
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of go up into Oregon, Portland, and I have some friends that might come visit and family that might stay in the van. They might stay. My cousin might stay on the floor. So. It's nice, like we can have bunk bed situation.
Under the thing?
Yeah, it's
Talk
like
about,
great.
that's the small hug.
Yeah, exactly. Super small. She said she's claustrophobic, so we're going to have to put her head kind of out that way.
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, you can just sleep on this, but then you only have like this much room from where the bed is. Yeah. It's not horrible, but it's also not the best.
Yeah.
I will say that, so.
Yeah, that's some prison shit.
The floor will be a little bit nicer, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Just as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
I talked to Eureka, California up to you yesterday or whenever it was. That's an interesting place because it's like a sociological oddity for me.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the Oregon coast is gorgeous, so it's a great jumping off point.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I just saw that because it just pulled up and I was like, oh, he was just talking about that the other day. So it wasn't like I'm like planning around it. It's like, oh, I'll stop through it at least.
Not a whole lot of people love that town at this point, but there is some dope like hipster coffee and beer shit
there. You go.
So
perfect. Get some extra beans since I'm running low. I only have 3 bags in there now instead of 6. So.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. Permission to use Big Hug. Can I?
Big Hug.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, plug whatever the fuck you want to. Instagram, website, whatever.
Yeah, it's just at views from my van.
Cool.
So, I think that's right. I guess someone hacked it and like sent out a bunch of emails or a bunch of messages. So at first I was like, why did they disable my account? I have one picture on it. Well, I was telling the story to the bread trucker guys because So Instagram is like talking to a black hole. They have a number you call, and then it's like, oh yeah, no, we don't really check this. So you can't leave a message, and you can email us, but we don't really check the emails either. Literally says that. So I go through our automated system. I kept trying, it wasn't working. Finally found a section that was like, if we've disabled your account and you want to like dispute it, go here. Well, I was by myself, so I'm doing all this, type it all in there, like send us a picture of your name, date, and like this random code, and you need to get both of your hands in the photo. Well, I'm sitting there, I'm like by myself at the table, and I was like, how am I gonna do this? And I'm like, cause I'm on the computer doing it, so I'm like sitting there and I'm like, I'm just gonna use my foot. So like I'm sitting there trying to take a picture. So I'm doing this and I tap it with my foot. I luckily don't get in there, but they're laughing. They're like, yeah, so does anyone even check? It's like, I have no idea. It's like, I feel like it goes into a black hole, or they just want to see all the random crazy photos people take. So but I finally got unlocked. Photos.
Cool.
So yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, y'all. We did it. That was episode 65 of From the Van. It was good to hang out with Chris. He let me borrow some tools to fuck with my van. One day, he was sort of in the moonlight parking lot with me for a while. We hung out a bit, drank some coffee and whatnot. And I think he's headed up to descend on La Sierra. And that is too far, too fast for me. So I will not be there. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. And I'll have another episode for you next week featuring Allie Rose. Another episode of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van. Dude, that shit is so bad. I fucking love it, dude.